Type NM cable, commonly known as non-metallic sheath cable, is a widely used wiring method in residential and some commercial buildings. Its applications are governed by the National Electrical Code, specifically Article 334. When installing NM cable, it is essential to adhere to the code's requirements to ensure a safe and compliant electrical system. One area of confusion often arises concerning the installation of NM cable in masonry block walls. The question often arises as to whether NM cable can be fished in these walls, and if so, under what conditions. Section 334.10 of the NEC provides the guidelines for the uses permitted for type NM cable. It states that NM cable can be used in both exposed and concealed work in normally dry locations. The key here is the phrase normally dry locations. This means that the environment where the cable is installed should not be subject to excessive moisture or dampness. Now, addressing the specific scenario of masonry block walls, the code allows NM cable to be fished in these walls, whether they are interior or exterior, as long as the other requirements of 334.10 are met. This means that the wall must be considered a normally dry location. This interpretation has been confirmed by various code experts and is generally accepted within the electrical industry. However, there are some important considerations to keep in mind when installing NM cable in masonry block walls. Firstly, masonry block walls can be porous and may allow moisture to penetrate under certain conditions. If the wall is subject to moisture, such as in a damp basement or an area prone to water leaks, it would not be considered a normally dry location. In such cases, NM cable should not be used. Secondly, the method of fishing the cable is also important. The cable should be installed in a way that prevents it from being damaged during the fishing process. This may involve using specialized tools or techniques to avoid sharp bends or abrasions to the cable's outer jacket. Thirdly, it is important to ensure that the cable is adequately supported within the wall. The NEC requires that NM cable be supported at intervals not exceeding 4.5 feet and within 12 inches of boxes, cabinets, and fittings. This requirement also applies when fishing cable in masonry block walls. One way to provide support is to use cable ties or straps to secure the cable to the masonry blocks. These supports should be installed in a way that does not damage the cable's insulation or outer jacket. Another consideration is the type of masonry block used. Some masonry blocks have hollow cores, while others are solid. When fishing cable in hollow core blocks, it is important to ensure that the cable does not come into contact with any sharp edges or debris inside the core. This can be accomplished by using a flexible conduit or sleeve to protect the cable. In solid masonry block walls, it may be necessary to drill or chisel a channel to accommodate the cable. When doing so, it is important to be careful not to damage the structural integrity of the wall. The channel should be wide enough to accommodate the cable without putting undue stress on it. In addition to the requirements of 334.10a, there may be other applicable code sections that need to be considered when installing NM cable in masonry block walls. For example, Section 300.4f addresses the protection of cables and raceways from physical damage. This section requires that cables and raceways be protected from physical damage where they pass through floor joists, rafters, or similar structural members. This requirement may also apply when fishing cable in masonry block walls, particularly if the cable is exposed to potential damage from tools or equipment. It is also important to be aware of any local amendments or interpretations of the NEC that may affect the installation of NM cable in masonry block walls. Some jurisdictions may have more restrictive requirements than the national code. Therefore, it is always a good idea to check with the local electrical inspector to ensure that the installation complies with all applicable regulations. In summary, the NEC allows type NM cable to be fished in masonry block walls, both interior and exterior, as long as the walls are considered normally dry locations and the other requirements of 334.10 are met. However, it is important to consider the potential for moisture penetration, the method of fishing the cable, and the need for adequate support and protection. Always consult with the local electrical inspector to ensure that the installation complies with all applicable codes and regulations. When installing electrical wiring in any type of wall, it is essential to follow safe work practices. Always disconnect the power before working on electrical circuits. Use appropriate tools and equipment. Wear personal protective equipment, such as safety glasses and gloves. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to hire a qualified electrician. The National Electrical Code is a comprehensive set of standards that governs the safe installation of electrical wiring and equipment. It is updated every 3 years to reflect changes in technology and best practices. It is important for electrical contractors and installers to stay up to date on the latest code requirements. The NEC is published by the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. The NFPA also offers a variety of training and certification programs for electrical professionals. These programs can help electricians stay current on the latest code requirements and improve their skills. In addition to the NEC, there are also a number of other standards and regulations that may apply to electrical installations. These may include state and local building codes, as well as standards from organizations such as Underwriters Laboratories (UL) and the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers (IEE). It is important to be familiar with all of the applicable standards and regulations before beginning any electrical work. When installing NM cable and masonry block walls, it is also important to consider the potential for condensation. Condensation can occur when warm, moist air comes into contact with a cold surface. This can be a particular problem in masonry block walls, which can be slow to warm up in the winter. If condensation is a concern, it may be necessary to install a vapor barrier on the warm side of the wall. A vapor barrier is a material that is designed to prevent moisture from passing through it. This can help to reduce the amount of condensation that forms inside the wall. Another option is to use a different type of wiring method that is less susceptible to moisture damage. For example, Type UF cable is designed for use in wet locations and can be installed directly in the ground. However, Type UF cable is more expensive than Type NM cable and may not be necessary in all situations. The decision of whether to use NM cable or another type of wiring method in masonry block walls should be based on a careful assessment of the specific conditions. Factors to consider include the potential for moisture penetration, the climate, and the local code requirements. Always consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector to determine the best wiring method for the application. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it is important to take all necessary precautions to ensure safety. Always disconnect the power before working on electrical circuits. Use appropriate tools and equipment. Wear personal protective equipment. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician. Remember that while NM cable is permitted in masonry block walls under certain conditions, it's crucial to evaluate each installation individually. Considerations like moisture levels, proper support, and protection against physical damage are paramount. Always prioritize safety and compliance with the NEC and local regulations. When in doubt, consult with a qualified electrician or inspector.